Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's up? Welcome back to the Steelers preview. It's been a couple weeks since we've had an actual Steelers preview show. Last week, the preview kind of morphed into a NFL draft show, whatever you want to call it, the wrap up of round one. We're going to talk about that for sure. And I think it's a good time to also say next week's going to be a little different. Next week, you're going to see the preview on, is it Wednesday? Yes, I think we'll be on Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Because next week is the schedule release. So next week, we're going to switch spots with the curtain call, which means that we will be on Wednesday and the curtain call with Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict, and whichever guest they have will be on Thursday. So just a little programming note. Nonetheless, I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me as always, I'm sure Brian Davis will be here. There's Brian Davis. We'll go to Dave first. Dave Schofield, the other co-editor. What's up, Dave?
Hey, Jeff, have you recovered yet? It's been a while since you haven't been on YouTube since the draft.
Right.
So
we were very delirious the last time I was on YouTube. Brian was showing us his lower back tattoo inadvertently. But it was that weekend I hate it.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I hate the draft weekend. I love it and I hate it because it is grueling. And you know more than anyone, Dave, you did 10 podcasts over the course of a weekend, it seems like?
I was on 9 just on Saturday. Between the breaking news and YouTube, I did 9 alone on Saturday. So wait a second. I do have to say this before we turn it over to the other person on the show. I mean, you brought up something, and I just constantly think of How I Met Your Mother reference. You said that you love that you hate it, and I don't know if you remember when they had the picture of the captain, and if you looked at him from here up, he looked all nice, but if you looked at him from here down, he looked so mean. And then they had to ask him what do you think of these things? Oh, he hates it. Oh, he loves it. And then they asked him what he thought of the Jonas Brothers, and they did this. And they're like, what is that? He's like, he hates that he loves them. So that's Jeff Hartman with the NFL draft.
It is.
He hates that he loves it, and he loves that he hates it.
But let me say this, and I'll be completely honest. I've been with the website for a draft ever since Bud Dupree got drafted. What was that, 2015? Yeah. 15. So I've been being an editor at some point since 2015. This was the smoothest draft we've ever had at Behind the Steel Curtain. It used to be, believe it or not, I was the one that was doing all the podcasting stuff. I was making sure all the pick articles got out. I made sure they all got on social media. I had to do the instant reaction stuff. And now the team has just developed so much that, this was the smoothest draft ever. And I have to put this up because it's hysterical. Steven writes, the draft equals the effing Catalina wine mixer. And if you've seen the movie Step Brothers, you know exactly what we're talking about, the Catalina wine mixer. All right. Joining us also is the hashtagger himself, Brian Anthony Davis. What's up, Brian? How's it going?
Sup? It's good to see both of you. And,
Sup?
Yeah, who's bad? No, I'm tired. I'm still tired. I was telling Dave before this, I'm still exhausted from the draft, and I didn't really move. I was just in one position on my couch. Then I'd move to a table for podcast, then back to the couch.
Yeah. It's the sleep deprivation part of it. It's one of those where it's like, I did a Let's Ride podcast on Thursday night at 1:00 in the morning. I don't even remember what I said. I had to listen back to it, like, wow, I didn't sound horrible. I mean, it wasn't my best show, but I mean, it's 1:00. It's just, that's exactly what it is. But you know what?
I thought it was good.
Thank you.
Ride or die.
Yeah, that's right. My ride or die crew. They're very loyal. They're like a rabid bunch. They're not big.
Ride or die.
We're the wild hogs. Anyways. So let's go. Let's talk about. I don't want to spend too much time on the draft because I think it's good. Well, we're going to break this down across the platform in a myriad of ways. So I want to get to news first, like we always do. And the news of the week, everyone's talking about it. Big Alejandro Villanueva. Not only does he sign with Baltimore, but in his first media availability, he kind of throws some shade. I wrote the article that ran Thursday morning for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And it was very matter of fact, but I did say in the article that I felt there were some shots fired at a couple points of his media session. And I want to get Charles' take on it. Not so much on what he said, but do you think that, well, you can talk about whatever you want, but do you think it was meant for a reason? Do you think that he was really throwing shade, or were we taking things out of context? Brian, we'll start with you.
I really thought it was a excuse for his play last year, really saying that, hey, you're getting a value here, Baltimore, but maybe it's a little bit of, it could have been a little shade when you throw in the TikTok thing. So yeah, it's a slight. So, but if you're going to join a Wang, you might as well be a Wang.
That is one aspect of this that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. He's joining the Ravens. You can't go into your first press conference in Baltimore and just praise and laud the Pittsburgh Steelers. You just can't do that. It's a culture thing. Dave, what do you think?
You just took my answer.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I mean, come on. That's what you're doing. If you're going to go in, I mean, what did he really talk about from the Steelers? The thing that everyone else outside of the Steelers fan base knew and was a big deal to them, more than probably the Steelers fan base themselves, to mention the TikTok thing. I mean, who knows? He could have said all these other little things that Ravens fans would have, well, most things go over their head, but that, and other things specifically. So he mentioned something in jest, and he's going to a new team. I mean, that's exactly what we would expect from someone coming to the Steelers from somewhere else, like that horrid purple place or anywhere else, that they would kind of be that way. I didn't look at it too much. I thought Zach Banner's response on Twitter was hilarious. He says, I can't hit up or say anything about Big Al here because he'll never see it. Remember, the dude still has the flip phone. I guess I got to text him. And, things like that, just kind of jabbing back at him. But it's really what it's really going to come down to is, how's he going to look going up against TJ Watt, man, if he's lined up at right tackle?
Well, and that brings up my next part of this and this was a question that was asked of me from my Ride or Die crew on my Tuesday. This was on Tuesday, the mailbag episode of my podcast. And they asked, is this an advantage for the Steelers? And if it's not, is an advantage for the Ravens? Because for every time you say, well, TJ Watt is comfortable going against Villanueva, at the same time, Villanueva is comfortable going against Watt. Now, that doesn't mean that Watt's not going to get the better of him, but still, is there an advantage one way or the other? Brian, what do you think?
Let me say first, I still love Big Al, and that's what you do. You want to endear yourself to the Baltimore, fine. As far as advantages go, I still think the Baltimore Ravens got a hell of a player. I still think he has a lot left in the tank. A lot of people thought that he was all washed up and done, and I didn't. I would have retained him, but they chose to go a different direction. As far as an advantage goes, remember they used to say that TJ would go up against Cam Hayward. Actually, Zach Banner in practice, they would always give them their best. I would think that these two would give each other their best when they play against each other. If there is an advantage, it might be 55-45 TJ, because Al still has something.
What about you, Dave? What do you think about the advantage aspect of this?
I'm going with a different set of numbers. Since Bryan wanted to throw numbers out there, I'm going 95-5. I mean, you're asking Al to go from the left side to the right side.
So he's going to be playing right tackle in Baltimore?
He's going to play over what? Ronnie Stanley? Isn't that who's still there?
I heard that he might be insurance in case Ronnie Stanley's not fully healthy.
Well, then if not, then Big Al's not even going to play. He's either going to play at right tackle or not at all. And if he's playing left because Ronnie Stanley's not there, guess what? That's a major downgrade. That's still advantage Steelers because Ronnie Stanley's a fantastic tackle, even though he wears that putrid color. You still got to say when someone's good.
Jonathan Ogden was pretty good too, and he played for that team. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you're not going to say that a player's terrible when they're a great player just because they play for a franchise that's terrible. Sorry. Well, I mean, I'm not saying even the way they're designed. I'm just saying that they're terrible in the way that we look at them because of who they are. Yeah. Anyway, so getting back to it, I say if it's going to be TJ going up against, I want to see Cam against Al and stuff like that. I really do. And we, as Steeler fans, we always said that Al was, his strength was pass blocking. What's that going to bring to the right tackle? Not only are they a run first team, then you move them to the right side. Maybe it works out great for him, but right now, time will tell. We'll see what he gets on the field. But right now, on paper, it doesn't look good, especially the amount of paper that they just gave him to come there.
That was a lot. That was a lot indeed. I think he had 2 years, 14 million, 8
Yes.
million guaranteed is what's been reported. I'm not sure if that's official or
that's
not.
That's what I had.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And I have to say that for me, and a lot of people ask, even like my dad called me, hey, what do you think about the stuff that Villanueva said? I don't care. I really don't care. I said this on Twitter today. I am a Steelers fan. I don't root for players. I root for the Steelers. Do I want the players to succeed? Yes. Why? Because that means the Steelers are succeeding. If a player leaves, they're not dead to me. I still like Villanueva. He's a great guy. He's a throwback guy. He served our country proudly overseas in multiple tours in Afghanistan. I mean, I've wished him nothing but the best, except for the 2 weeks that they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's just the way that it is. I just I don't put too much stock into it. We'll put it that way. Ryan O'Toole gives us $5. And he gives a good analogy. He says, AV, Villanueva, stated the team made him aware they weren't bringing him back, which is true. Villanueva said this in his press conference. He said, if Coke fires you, would you be happy to go work for Pepsi? Absolutely. So that's pretty much, I think that's a pretty good analogy that, the Steelers said, hey, and we're not going to be asking you back anytime soon. But here's another question. 2 years, 14 million, 8 million guaranteed. I know Dave thought this because he actually messaged me about it. I'll ask Bryan, though. Anyone smell something fishy here? Anyone smell like a contract that was already agreed upon and yet wasn't signed until after the deadline? Bryan, you think that was the case?
Collusion. Collusion. They found a loophole and they exposed this kind of loophole, and it's just not fair because you got to look at the fact, all right, you met this week, but we're just going to wait. All right, I tell you what, look, I'm cheating on you're cheating on your husband with me. Okay. But we're just going to say that we met after you finally broke up with him. So then we could save face. No, it's collusion. You had the plans in place. You had it done. The deal was done. You just waited to do it on paper. If the NFL knows that there's a meeting, you would think that they would just go back and say, okay, you know what? No, you had this in place. Any free agent, if they find out that somebody was contacting a player beforehand, and then they finally do it after the free agent period, they lose a pick or they're fined or something. This is once again the team that goes to the rules committee and says, hey, we got to change this rule. We're going to change this rule. We're going to change this rule because we cry all the time and we're going to have it our purple way. Well, today they did it again. And the NFL is going to stop and look and goes, these guys are Belichickian at heart. They're trying to skirt the rules. Bah!
Dave, you agree, right? You think that there might have been a little bit of a, behind closed doors.
Oh, I mean,
nod, wink, wink.
That and however many other deals there might have been that's happened, but that's not breaking the rules. It's not even bending the rules. That's doing what all the teams should be doing in that case. But now let me throw something else out to you. This was the risk that they both took. If they agreed to this beforehand, he did not sign beforehand. If he'd have signed and actually put pen to paper, that would be a problem, because I'm pretty sure it was that cheating team up north a few years ago got busted for this, where they actually had the signed contract and waited until after 4 p.m. to submit it. It was found out, and the player they went back and changed the time and made the player count towards compensatory formula. I'm pretty sure that happened. I can't quote it for sure what year or who it was or whatever, but I remember that story coming out when I was reading up stuff about compensatory stuff in the past. So there's that. But if they just kind of agree, hey, this is what the deal is going to be, this is going to be, oh yeah, great. Well, guess what? The risk that Al was taking is that if somebody else cuts a much better right tackle that they would want for an option, then there's no deal. They could go after that guy. And if the injury in Denver takes place even a few hours earlier, there's a decent chance that Al's with Munchak. So they both ran the risk that other things, the other side could have had a change of heart in order to, and it wasn't just about the Steelers being able to gain what would I estimated to be another fifth round pick, but he would have caused the cancellation, and all Baltimore's sitting there with his fourth round guy. So he would have canceled the fourth round guy. So they get to keep a 4th-round pick, and the Steelers don't get a 5th-round pick, but it's the way the system works. But there were inherent risks, and boy, it would have been nice if that would have been the way it would have played out. I'd have been fine seeing Big Al in Denver. I'd have been fine with that.
Yeah, and we'll see. I'm actually fine with them going up against him twice a year because, like you said, if it's Cam, if it's TJ, I think they're going to abuse him. Yeah. We've seen, as Steeler fans, Al struggle against elite pass rushers in the past. Mm-hmm. He's also struggled against guys that are big and strong that want a bull rush. Well, that is Cam Hayward's forte. He's going to walk you right back into the quarterback. But let's also not forget, they act like they're going to throw the ball a lot in Baltimore. I hope they do that. If they do that, that's like career suicide. Yep. It is career suicide if they try to turn Lamar Jackson into a passer. But let's not talk about the Ravens because that just is going to get my blood pressure up. Let's talk about the 4 players, and if I missed one for some reason, that have left the Steelers in some way, shape, or form. So you have Bud Dupree going to the Titans, James Conner to the Cardinals, Mike Hilton to the Bengals, and now Alejandro Villanueva to the Ravens.
You got the comp pick. The one player that's actually given him a comp pick.
Oh, Filer?
Matt Filer.
Okay. So we'll throw Filer in there. Anyone else?
You can throw in Sean Davis if you really want to.
No, he's not going to make the team. He's going to get cut. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, he's what, Indy?
Yeah. And they actually picked up another Sean Davis, SHAWN, but that's neither here nor there. All right. Out of the players that were cut, who do you think is going to have the best 2021 season? Now, again, that's Bud Dupree in Tennessee, coming off that ACL. Keep that in mind. James Conner in Arizona, not going to be the bell cow there. Mike Hilton, who knows what the Bengals are going to do to that guy? I feel bad for him. Villanueva, we just talked about him. We're not sure if he's going to be starting or not, whether it's right or left side. And then Matt Filer, they are assuming that he's going to start out in LA. So, Bryan, we'll start with you. Which player has the best 2021 season outside of Pittsburgh?
I'm only going to say one guy. To me, it's between 2, but I will only say one, and it's close. But I'm going to go with Bud Dupree. I'm sure he's going to be fully healed from that. That defense is set up with a lot of guys around him that are going to command some attention. He might get the TJ Watt type of favor there with some other players because they have a lot of juice on defense that they didn't have last year. So I'm going to go with number 48.
All right. Dave, what do you think out of those players?
Is he still number 48? Do we know yet?
I don't know.
48. Who cares? He was 48.
Until he gets a jersey, he's 48.
Yeah. I don't really have it all that close. I hate to agree with Bryan, but I didn't have it between 2. I think it's Dupree all the way. I think that's the best fit for him. I will be honest with you. I do think it's a pretty good fit with James Conner in Arizona. But like Jeff said, I don't know that he's going to be the main guy called upon a lot of the time. So that's what it's really going to stem with. But I see Dupree basically being their guy there, I mean, not there, as a key part of that defense. So I think he'll have a decent year. I mean, do I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler after leaving Pittsburgh? I mean, he wasn't one here. No, but I don't know. I don't look for him to lose a step going there because I think that was a good place for him to be if he wasn't here.
I'm not sold on Dupree's knee being completely healthy by the time the season starts, by the way. He injured that in week 13?
December 2nd.
That's late to tear an ACL. And I know that modern medicine is tremendous, but that is still that's a painful injury. And Devin Bush is just now, and he got hurt, week 4? Something like that last season?
Yeah. 6.
Okay, regardless.
Yeah, they had a bye in week 4.
Right. Thank you, Tennessee.
Don't get me started on that one.
Anyways, he's just now starting. If you follow him on social media, he's still rehabbing that thing and getting right. He'll be fine, I think, by the time the season rolls around. I could even see him having to take it easy at the beginning of training camp as they get him back right. So that has me.
That's a good point, Jeff. I didn't even take that.
That has me pause. That long term, I agree with you. Bud Dupree, hands down. So that makes me pause on Dupree when I said just for 2021. James Conner, I said no. Villanueva, not sure. What do we know about Filer in LA? Is he going to be tackle or is he going to be guard? Does anyone know?
With who they just picked up, I'm almost thinking he's going to be a guard because they had a lot of holes. I could see him there, but he could still possibly be right tackle. I think Slater is going to come in there and play right away.
Probably. So if that's the case, they have him at guard. I think Mike Hilton might be the one that he kind of. I just don't know how they're going to use him because I think that he's a versatile weapon, but we know the Bengals. We know the Bengals. The Bengals that had the best tackle in the draft available to them in the draft, and they took a receiver. So
the only guy they said was a surefire Hall of Famer in this draft, which is funny. Watch him get hurt and never play a snap or something. I don't want to say that, but
who?
he was supposed to be the biggest home run pick of what you were going to get, and they didn't take him because they wanted Carson. Or why am I'm even saying the right guy? No, I was trying to say Carson Palmer. I going to one of the throwback. Joe Burrow. They wanted Joe Burrow to have his buddy. I mean, that's what they went with.
Carson Palmer has been the quarterback.
Carson Palmer.
Another injured
quarterback. 3 other teams.
They wanted Ken Anderson to come back.
Yeah.
The throwing Samoan.
When I started to say Carson, that's not right.
You know what? They did pick up a kicker in the 5th round too. So
yeah, that's right. Bullocks.
Mike Brown rolls.
Oh, Bullocks.
Bullock will be on the market, anyways.
Can I say one other thing about these guys, Jeff?
Sure.
This is what you got to remember. 2 of these guys, the 5 we were talking about, and possibly 3, we're not really sure, are guys that the Steelers just flat up didn't want back. James Conner and Alejandro Villanueva. So the Ravens can be all excited all they want. Say, remember, the Steelers' offensive line was last year, and even though he was the highest graded guy, they didn't want him back. I mean, they had a chance. They could have brought him back, and they didn't want him back from all indications. Don't know that how much did they want Filer? That's the question mark. You know, so. I don't know that they did, but the 2 guys that the Steelers would have liked to have kept were, I believe, Mike Hilton and Bud Dupree, but because of the salary cap situation, I don't even know if they could even get into negotiations. I don't think they wanted to let Hilton go. But so to me, it comes down to those 2 guys because they were at least, the Steelers might have wanted to keep him. But then I think Hilton went to such a crappy situation. I just don't trust the Bengals to use him properly. And if you're not using him in the right way, he's going to be a liability and not an asset. If he'd have gone somewhere, honestly, like Baltimore or maybe even Tennessee, I would have trusted them to use him as an asset. But until they show me that they can do something better in Cincinnati, they might have turned him into a liability.
Because now what are they going to do? They're going to take either Eric Ebron or Pat Fryermuth, and they're going to put him on Hilton. They're going to make Hilton have to cover him. And we've seen this as Steeler fans. We've seen this. So this is one of those situations where I just talked about Big Al struggling with power rushers before. The Steelers know this. They know Mike Hilton's weaknesses as well. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plans out. I didn't mean for this to go off on a tangent, but I just thought it was a good connection there between Big Al's comments and the upcoming season. All right. Let's talk a little bit about this draft class, but more specifically, the fact that even though the Steelers checked a ton of boxes in this draft class, and I talked about this on our Saturday, one of those days, we did the wrap-up show. That's where things got weird. And when the wrap-up show, I was talking about how I wrote in the articles, like after they drafted Najee Harris, the Steelers team needs now remain center, guard, tackle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the time they had gotten to the 7th round, I didn't have any other positions. And when they drafted Presley Harvin, then I was literally done. I can't say anything else because they did get a lot of they checked a lot of boxes, but there still are holes on this roster. Okay, so I want to talk about a few of those. We will end up having to take a break during the discussion, but that's okay. Bryan, we'll throw it to you first. When you look at who they acquired, and if you want to throw in undrafted players, you can, but let's be honest, the likelihood of them being the next Mike Hilton or James Pierre is not likely. We'll put it that way. So on this roster.
Yeah, you broke up. We need to say that one more time.
I said, Bryan, which is one position that you still see a glaring hole on this roster?
If I'm looking at this objectively, I don't think there's many holes, because if there's holes, if we're talking about the starting 22, I think they're fine going into it. I think they're everywhere they need to be except for at one cornerback position. And that's it. Because everywhere else, like Kevin Colbert said last week, we could play a game now. They could play more of a game now after that draft, because you bring in Najee Harris and Freiermuth and a center who, look, I think he's going to have to do a lot to not start. I really think that they're expecting him to try to start. Yeah, I mean, it's debatable, but there's a possibility that he could start. So I'm not going to consider that a hole, because they've got the plan. They've got the plan to fill in when he's ready. So that's why I can't call center a hole yet. The only really hole to me is the fact that I don't know what Cam Sutton. I love Cam Sutton. I don't know how he's going to fit into being a full-time guy at the corner. I know you might move him in the slot. I know you brought some guys in, but when you bring in a young cornerback, they're not expected to jump in right away, where you could put some other guys in right away, especially your tight end and your running back. You could put in right away. We saw a center start 11 years ago as a rookie. I know he is not Marquise Pouncey, but there's that possibility. So I'm going to go back to cornerback as one of the few main weaknesses as far as a hole that needs to be filled.
Okay. I think we can all agree on that. Dave, before you give your position, let's talk about this cornerback position. So, and I guess I could throw it to Bryan first, and he could quickly give his thoughts. Who's starting opposite Joe Hayden on the outside, Bryan? Do you think it's Cam Sutton?
I really think it is Cam.
Okay. Dave, do you agree?
I think it will be. That's who's going to get the first crack at it. So I think it will be the start.
Okay. Then who's going to be the nickel?
Oh, can I answer that one?
Sure. Go for it, Dave.
Cam Sutton.
Then who goes to the outside when he goes to the nickel?
James Pierre.
I thought you were going to say Cam Sutton. I was like, he can't play everywhere.
No, it's people keep saying,
so you
people were saying
Pierre
this before the draft. We need to draft a nickel corner. If Cam Sutton can be your outside guy in base and slide in
sub package.
You
want him to do that though?
Isn't that what William Gay would do, and then eventually just transition to that?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe you. I believe you.
And I mean,
and
that's
who else
what they did. What's that?
Deshae Townsend did that.
Yeah, where they would play on the outside, but would come to the inside whenever you had multiple corners on the field. Because why would you not put your guys in their strength? If James Pierre's strength is the outside, which I'm not sure, we don't have enough of a picture of him. All I know is the Steelers love him. I know the Steelers love him, which makes me love him. So for all we know, maybe James Pierre is just as fine in the nickel corner position, but we don't know. And that's why I say, well, we've seen what they did in the playoffs last year when there was no Joe Hayden. So now imagine Joe Hayden is Joe Hayden because he's Joe Hayden. Maybe just think of Frank Caliendo, Brett Favre is Brett Favre because of Brett Favre. Sorry. When he's pretending to be John Madden.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's Joe Hayden. So then if you have Cam Sutton and then when you bring in a third corner, it doesn't mean that corner has to come inside. That's just the way I think. I think that's what makes the most sense right now.
Fine. That's fine. So you're saying that James Pierre would be ahead of Justin Lane, or my boy, as we call him affectionately on this show, Lustin Jane, because he's very sensitive. That's more on Twitter, but anyways. So you think Justin Lane?
That's my call right now.
What is Lustin's role in this team then? Who's the dime? Who's the Cam Sutton from last year is the question, because if Cam Sutton, you think about it, it was Hilton in the nickel, Nelson was out wide, and then in the dime, they'd bring in Cam Sutton. So who's that guy?
How about I'm thinking it might be like a Miles Killebrew or something like that.
A safety. Okay.
Yeah, because
Bryan?
a lot of times it would be a third safety.
Go ahead, Bryan.
I know you said we couldn't count on these guys, but I'm thinking a Shakur Brown or a Mark Gilbert could possibly see some action on this team
or
on the roster.
Trey Norwood, round pick, maybe. They say
I
safety.
I wouldn't be banking on those guys, but I could
safety.
see them evolving into that eventually. I wouldn't think of those as.
I think this is a good way of talking this out and saying that this is a team need. Okay, this is a glaring hole. This is what we titled this whole podcast, was a glaring hole. I think this is one of those glaring holes. What are the odds, in your opinion, though, that they might go out and get someone else that's on the free agent market? No, I'm not talking about Richard Sherman, but there's some other players out there. Bryan, do you think it's likely or no?
I don't know who all is out there. I know that Casey Hayward's no longer out there, which I would have loved to have seen come in, and now he's in Vegas. But, I think they're going to try to bring somebody in, but he's not going to be a brand name.
Okay. But you do think they might bring someone else in?
If they do, it's a guy that you'll be busting out the owl noises when you go, who? Because you won't know him, but he could be valuable.
Okay. Dave, what do you?
Here, I'm going to go bold prediction. Prediction. They bring in another cornerback in September. You're talking about another Ross Cockrell situation or something like that, where they're going to look for someone who doesn't make a team somewhere at that point, because they got plenty of young guys that they can give plenty of opportunity to during the preseason. And if one of them, shines super bright, then you don't even have to do that. But if not, then you're looking to maybe add something there. Because honestly, right now you're looking at adding someone who's not on a 90-man roster. You're going to have much better options when you're talking about someone not on a 53-man roster. But that's just me. That just seems like a Steelers move to me. If they're going to do that,
they'll take a scrap heap player. Yeah. Hey, Ross Cockrell panned out. I thought he was a good player for him. Okay.
For what they had at the time, he was one of the better ones they had, but they got significantly better after that.
You don't like Valentino Blake? Come on. Anyways.
Antoine, Valentino, Antoine.
It's like that gif on Twitter where you see the Spider-Man pointing at the Spider-Man. Like, wait, it's you. All right, we're going to take a quick break on the audio side. We're going to continue this conversation on part 2, so make sure you join us there. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, don't go anywhere. We aren't going anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second segment of Let's Ride. I'm sorry. Steelers preview.
there's never a second segment of Let's Ride. Really?
Yes, there is.
And
There's always a
name.
second segment. There's always a second segment after the break. I'm so sorry. This is the Steelers preview, not Let's Ride. But still, anyways, I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me is the other co-editor, Dave Schofield, the Bryan Anthony Davis, the podcast producer. And let's continue this conversation. At the end of part 1, we were talking about holes on the roster. Bryan brought up cornerback. I think that's the number one. Dave, what's another one for you?
Okay. I'm going to say this. When I think of holes on the roster, you're either thinking A, you don't even have a good starter, or B, what I ultimately think of, if one injury occurs, are you in big trouble? That's just kind of how I look, how you want to run an NFL roster. Yeah. So, if someone gets hurt, or how big a trouble are you in, something like that. So therefore, I'm actually going to say see, I don't want to call that. The problem is when you have plenty of bodies, but you just don't know how they're going to pan out, because you could very easily I'll go ahead and throw it out there for debate, something like offensive tackle.
I'm shocked you didn't go with another position, to be honest with you. Like, to me, there's a logical number 2, but if you want to go tackle, that was my number 3. If it was good,
I'll go tackle, and then we'll see what your number 2 is.
So go ahead and explain yourself. Go ahead.
Well, just because, Zach Banner's coming off the injury.
Yep.
Looks like you're going to be sending Chooks over to the other side, where some people feel like that's a more natural fit. I've said that, but then again, I thought Matt Filer was more of a natural fit at guard, and we saw how that worked out, where he definitely was better the year before. But Jeffrey Benedict chalks that up to having to play next to Big Al, not because Big Al is bad, but because Big Al is a completely different type of player. And they're going to find that out in Baltimore, that playing next to him, it takes a different type of player. Anyway, back to this. So the problem is you don't know what you have in 4th round pick Dan Moore yet. You have someone that you're hoping. Seriously, I would love for him to get the Justin Lane treatment. I would love for him to not have to play an offensive snap this year, because if he does, it's because you're dealing with either injury or poor play. It would be really nice if they could get him just a year to when I say no offensive snaps, I mean at tackle. Maybe he's the jumbo tight end if they decide to still use one, even though.
What about Joe Haig?
Then you've got Joe Haig. Joe Haig to me is a very undersized tackle. That's still kind of a head scratcher to me. I don't know that it's a guarantee. It's funny because when you and I did our 53-man roster prediction today, there was people in the comments saying, I think Haig might not make the team. And I'm like, I think they have to keep him because he's the guy keeping him from getting an additional comp pick because he's the only addition that they had that counted to the comp formula. I don't see them not at least keeping him around as an insurance policy, even if he's not all that great. But remember, he was not a starter in Tampa. He did when he had to spot start. It apparently did not go well. I haven't gone back and broke down all his film or anything like that. So I'm a little bit shaky with tackle. I'm not saying that I think they have to add more players. So I don't know that I want to call it a hole as much as I call it a weakness. Something that's a little bit thin based on you're not exactly sure about your starters, and therefore you're not also sure about your backups either.
You bring up good points in regards to the tackles and the Steelers' backups. Like you said, more. I mean, I've watched Jeffrey Benedict. At least I know on Friday we're going to run his part one of his breakdown of Moore from Texas A&M. He just doesn't look like he's ready yet. Not that he's never going to be ready. Just not going to be ready yet. I've always said that you can categorize draft picks as picks that are for now and picks that are going to be like for future project types. He fits more the latter. Bryan, what do you think about the tackle spot? Is it a glaring team need in your opinion?
In 2022, it is. I think right now it's fine. I know you're banking on everybody staying healthy, but you have Haig there. You have the I know he's got to work to make the team. I know Coward has to make the team as well. Coward is a guard. I know he's a guard, but he's also played a tackle. You interrupted
because honestly, if he could play some tackle, that would make me feel better.
When they brought him in, they said that he has had some experience at both places, that he could play both. So
Dave's interrupting again.
Yeah, come on, Dave. Because I even did I know he's a tackle, and then like Dave broke in on me. Whoa, big fella. All right. Now the only thing with Haig though, the only thing you want to do with Haig, just don't throw the ball to him in the end zone anymore. After the Super Bowl, he's banned from trying to catch passes. He blew a perfect pass.
The defender ripped it out of his hands.
Oh no, he blew
it. That was a good defensive play.
He dropped it.
It wasn't that he blew it. No, he got ripped out of his hands.
Drop. Anyway. Now, I think there's more to worry about there. Remember about, and I understand Moore is a project. Jeffrey's saying it. Dave wants him to have the Justin Lane treatment. Yeah, that understudy treatment's great. That's the treatment we wanted Kevin Dotson to have last year. Kevin Dotson didn't get. We kept on saying it's going to be a disaster if Kevin Dotson plays because either somebody's injured or they don't play well, just like Dave said earlier. But then when he went into play, we're like, whoa, he just got a jump start on year number 2. We've got our guy now. The rust is off. There's no questions about Kevin Dotson this year. So if a guy has to step up, you see them step up, that could be a possibility. Remember, and he talked about it himself, how he misjudged this call. The infamous Carlos Davis is bad at football. Well, Carlos Davis got his chance, got his limelight, got his chance to shine, and ran with it and set himself up for an opportunity with his team. So the guys can be a project, but you just never know when they get that opportunity, how itching they are to get in there. Now, you've got a guy like Moore who reminds me of a Dotson. He just reminds me of a hungry guy with that mean streak. Reminds me a lot of the same guy. I think he's a guy that if he's given the opportunity, he is going to there's not going to be any lack of heart there. Let's just put it that way.
Great point about Kevin Dotson and the I guess you would call it the expectations of him or the narrative around him as he was drafted in the 4th round. So good point there. I think it's very valid.
Can I say one last offensive
Go for
line?
it, Dave.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Because I know we need to keep moving. Now, I did not break down extensive tape of either guys. I only saw several plays. A lot of them was because Jeffrey Benedict shared them with me. But when I look at Kevin Dotson's film coming out of college, the few plays that I saw, and I look at Dan Moore's few plays that I saw coming out of college, Dotson had a had a better pro-ready technique. I'm just talking strictly technique. It's not that Dan Moore's not going to be a good pro. It's just he might take a little bit of time to get that technique down. And honestly, technique means even more at the tackle position. So therefore, that's why could he turn into Kevin Dotson 2021? That would be absolutely fantastic. I'm just not putting that kind of pressure and expectation on him for that reason.
The funny thing is when you go back to Dotson, what did everyone say when he was drafted? He's a road grader. He's a run blocker. He wants to go downhill. What did he grade out as one of the best guards? Pass protection.
As a pass blocker, yeah. He was one of the best pass blocking guys.
But what else did they say about him? They gave him the P word. A lot of people gave him the word project.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
When you're right, you're right. And he's right.
That's only because they didn't know squat about him because he wasn't at the combine.
True. He wasn't invited.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
My position that I'm going to bring up, I thought was going to be a no-brainer for David too, and that's the pass rusher, outside linebacker, edge, whatever the heck you want to call it. But I mean, you talk about what if we're using Dave's description of a hole in the roster. You have two starters there in Highsmith and Watt. No one's going to complain about that duo. I don't think you should. After that, yeah, it gets dicey. We'll put it that way. I mean, if you're banking on the Q from the U and Quincy Roche, and that's a 6th-round pick. I don't care if he was projected
catch
in
it
late.
on, Q from the U.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. I like that a lot. I don't care if he was projected to be a late 4th or a 5th-round pick and they got him in the 6th. That means absolutely nothing to me. It just tells me that we're putting a lot of hope in this one player. The other guy, Cassius Marsh or Cassius Marsh, however you say his name, the Pokemon King. No, please. No, thanks. Like to me, I look at it and say, if they're going to bring in any player at any position, it's not cornerback. It's got to be a pass rusher. Give me Ryan Kerrigan on a cheap deal, 1-year deal. I'd be happy with that because it's better than what they have.
Or not cheap. They're not cheap. That's the problem.
Well, hey, Ryan. Hey, this is Kevin Colbert, Ryan. Yeah, how are you doing? You want to play football this year? Well, you can make nothing, or you can come here and make some money. Yeah. Most people would
show everybody what you can do with our great defense.
You get a triad deal. We'll give you $3 million for 1 year. Come in, Brian. Let's go. And if he says no, I'll pass. All right. Good luck on the unemployment line. I mean, seriously, there's going to come a point
you're not going to be our starter, but you're going to get lots of snaps.
Right. There's going to come a point where these players are going to have to, and he's just one of many. Melvin Ingram is another one that's out there. Justin Houston, if you think he still has anything left in the tank, they're out there, and there's going to come a point they have to make a decision. Either I'm going to continue to.
I like your total though. You're spot on with your money.
Continue to wait, hope for an injury, or go to somewhere like Pittsburgh where you have a 2nd-year player in Alex Highsmith on the side and say, I could probably still see a significant amount of time. And how nice would it be to have TJ Watt rushing on the other side, taking all the attention away? I've been saying for all the time because I've watched Ryan Kerrigan almost his whole career here as we live in Maryland and you see the Washington team on TV a lot. I would love to see him come in, just be a situational pass rusher. Go in and spell these guys. Let's go. Let's make some. That'd be great. I'd love to see Kerrigan in Pittsburgh. But still,
I even looked at the market to know he was still there. That's a really good one.
Go ahead, Brian.
I want to give you some credence on this too, because that's a move that the Ravens would make. And I kind of complain that the Steelers don't kind of make that veteran move a lot. Even late in June or late in August, when the Ravens always seem to make that pay off. They bring in a guy like that. I would love to see a Kerrigan too. I'm not ready to slam the door on Cassius Marsh because the only reason I say that is, look, when you bring in a guy and his first action is you bring him in right at Thanksgiving and his first action is in December, he has no chance to gel with that team. I want to see what he does with some significant time, learning the team, learning the system. I think you might have a more qualified backup than you think you have. I'm not banking on him. I'm not going to Vegas and putting money on the Pokemon King. All I'm saying is I'm a little more comfortable than you are, Jeff, with him.
I will give you that he came in mid-season. I don't think he played much last year, so he's probably not in the best shape. It was a strange year, so I'll give you that. But even then, I still think you need a decent 4th. I'd still think you need another body. And I'm just, again, it might be Roche. It might be Q from the U, but it also, that's a lot of pressure on a rookie. some are saying Anthony Chickillo. Please, Lord, don't do that. I mean, if you're gonna bring, I think Q from the U could do what Chickillo did as a rookie. You stand up, you play patty cake, and then you just go to the sideline when the play's over. That's it. That's all he did.
I'm starting my profiles on the undrafted free agents, and I'm starting with linebackers, so that might be a better option than Anthony Chickillo right now.
Yeah. Hey, what do they have in common? 2 6th-round picks from the U, both 6th-rounders.
Chickillo was a defensive lineman. He was a defensive end. Remember, they had him lose all that weight and try to transfer to the outside. That just didn't work out. Not at all. All right, Bryan, do you have any other positions, or is it just those 3, really? I have one in mind, but I wanted to ask you first.
You know what? I actually think that I would like to see, you're going to think I'm crazy. I'd like to see a little bit more with safety. Because that's kind of with depth. I think they're fine with their starters. Yeah. And don't buy into the fact that a lot of people think Terrell Edmonds has been cut because they didn't give him the 5th-year option. No, that means that this is his walk year, possibly. That's what that means. But I think they're fine there. But one of those guys go down. I don't think Marcus Allen's the guy because I think he's more of an inside linebacker now. So I don't really see the depth there at safety anymore.
Miles Killebrew was signed, so he's an option there.
The Steelers have him listed as a linebacker, but I think he's got
to be a safety. Do they really?
Yeah, on the Steelers website, they have him listed as a linebacker. I don't think so. I think because if not, then they really are struggling at safety.
But so you know who he is?
Should be safety.
He's Darius Hayward-Bay. He's a special teamer. He's Jordan Dangerfield. He has ST next to his name. You did not consider. I know you saw some action from DHB, but what I'm saying is he is there to be a special teamer.
He was tough his first 2 years, especially his second year in the league on defense when he had the right defensive coordinator.
And we know who he is.
Just who happens to be the
secondary coach.
Terrell Austin. Yeah. No, I love the guy. I really like him, but I think he's considered to be the special teamer, but I could be wrong.
No, it's I'm not. I don't think either one of us is saying that safety isn't an issue in terms of depth.
Oh no,
it's a good one. That's a good one. Dave, is there any other position that you want to add to this?
I'm not really, because honestly, inside linebacker, like I say, they could, if they wanted to upgrade it in the draft, I could have seen it. But I mean, even you've got Bush, you've got Williams, you got Spillane. You don't know between Williams and Spillane what they're going to do. I don't even know if UG3 will make the team because it's just hitting that point where it's kind of, pooper get off the pot. Because you can't, what is it? You can't make the team in the tank or I can't remember.
You can't make the club from the tub. Can't make the club from the tub.
I'm thinking of the ice tank.
Team from the tank.
Team from the tank. That's terrible. Oh, that was awful. I love it. I love how terribly awful it was.
There's a
t-shirt. Make a team from the tank. Think of the ice tank. Yeah,
you can make the touchdown zone from the tank.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
So.
You get tanked in the touchdown zone.
and honestly, I think those are the main 4. I do. Because some people might say center. It's a completely different thing by drafting Green. And I know there's still people like, but they passed on Creed Humphrey. I'm trying to explain this to everybody as much as I can. They passed on Creed Humphrey because they felt that Kendrick Green was a better fit for what they wanted. And looking into him, I think they're right. I think they are. Like I said, he was just not on my radar because everywhere I was looking at draft profile stuff, he was listed as a guard. But if you think about it, the Steelers like to have their centers do guard things. If you think about it, when it comes to pulling on sweeps and things like that. So that's the kind of player that makes the most sense for the Steelers. And if he's not starting right away because it's BJ Finney, then it's BJ Finney. And that's assuming BJ Finney gets back to 2019 BJ Finney. Because 2020 BJ Finney ain't making his team because it was just not good. But I'm hoping back in Pittsburgh, everything's straightened out with him, that he's going to be ready to go. And I'm hoping that's the BJ Finney that's back with the Steelers.
There's magic in those gold pants. I'm going to tell you
that.
Well, we might need you to go
that magic.
You might need to go to Heinz Field and get those pants back to him because those pants might have been magical
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're still magical or what, but
bad don't stain. Let's just say that.
T-shirt.
Let me say this though.
Bad don't stain.
I want to go back to the whole Creed Humphrey thing. They had a top 4 or 5. Myers was not on the top 4 from what I'm reading the scuttlebutt right now. Myers from the Ohio State University was not there. Landon Dickerson, if he was there at number 2, was not getting picked. He was there for maybe round 3 or 4, but he was not there for 2. So if Philadelphia doesn't take him, everybody's going to think, oh, they passed on Dickerson, they passed on Creed. They had their plan, and this was their plan because Dave said something that when I listened to Dave say this on the Scobro show the other night, it has resonated, and it's simple. The whole thing about bringing in Green, they knew that was the plan that they wanted to go to, and it just made sense for the other picks as well. When you see, oh, this is the direction they had. This was their plan, and they had the plan where they wanted to take Green. And he was higher on everybody's list. And when Colbert said, this is where I'm quoting Dave, though. When Colbert said, this draft is so deep at center, that's when we should have all thought about it. And that's what Dave was trying to say the other night on the show, that the clues were there. So we had in our heads, because we're watching mock drafts for months, and we have all these guys saying, all these Steeler insiders saying that Creed Humphrey is the guy. They don't know the list either, because Mike Tomlin will tell you, and he said it on that press conference, I live in a vacuum. And when he says he lives in a vacuum, they don't care. We have a top 24 list, and this is who's on it. And that's who they scouted. Green was high, so that's why I'm loving this pick even more, because they were sure on him. He wasn't a reach, and I don't think he was. So that's why I'm comfortable with the center position a little bit more. I think they could get something out of Finney. You've got some insurance with Hassenhauer there. I think ultimately that Green is probably your number 2 guy. And it starts out with Finney.
All right, before we go to trivia, I want to ask you all real quick. Does running back ever pop up on the list? I know they just took Najee Harris number 1, but let's look at the depth, though, behind him. Benny Snell, a lot of people have kind of said that he's lacking some luster, that maybe he once had. Jalen Samuels, Anthony McFarland, Kalen Ballage. C-U-T is how you say that. Cut. Anyway.
It's funny because you and I both cut him on our first.
But still, that's not like a who's who list after your starter. Are you guys comfortable with the depth there? Bryan, we'll go with you first.
Capital Y-E-S. And I'll say this. They're not bringing in Adrian Peterson. They're not bringing in a veteran runner. I will say it right now. It's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is because they wanted to set out to do one thing and change the scheme. Remember that bus that kept on backing up on, Randy Land? I forgot his name already. On Randy Fietner in that press conference. My gosh, it was basically like having a voodoo doll, that press conference. He was feeling pain because that bus kept on backing up over him. They want to change the scheme. They're bringing in the scheme to change it. You're going to see a whole lot more of Anthony McFarland. He's going to get a chance that he didn't get last year, not to be the number 1 guy. We know who the number 1 guy is. He was drafted for that reason, but they have plenty of depth for what they want to do, and Snell is going to be incorporated into it.
Dave, thoughts on the running back position?
Yeah, it's when you looked at it before the draft, I mean, obviously, I mean, Najee Harris is the guy. I mean, that's just what it's going to be.
Debate that, yeah.
But so all those other guys look much better on a depth chart when there's someone else to be the guy than what they look like when there's no one else to be the guy. Now, like I said, it's my biggest concern is with taking a running back in the first round is not just career longevity, but it's just season-wide longevity. Running backs get hurt. If you have a running back that plays the whole season, you are a rare team. It just doesn't happen. It's more often than not than your starting running back misses time. You just hope that it's not too much. It's just, if people start making James Conner comparisons, it's because they overdid James Conner, that he wasn't available. James Conner, honestly, did not really miss any more games than what the typical NFL starting running back misses. They miss a lot of games. They really do. I think I might have to break into those numbers at some point just to kind of show. So that's my biggest fear with Harris is, when is he going to miss games and for how long? Because the eternal optimist in me says he's just not. It's going to work out. But you have to think that that's not going. You hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. And I think the other guys are like most NFL teams, where after you have a main guy, you just kind of have other guys, and then hopefully one of them gets hot during that time if you're missing your other guy, and then they turn out all right. So I don't see them as much different than how a number of NFL teams handle it. So I'm okay with it.
All right. I thought that was good. You guys have trivia tonight? I know Dave does. Bryan, do you have trivia?
Yes, I do.
All right. Go ahead, Dave. Let's get us started on the trivia train.
Okay, trivia train. It's not a very long question, and I'm pretty sure Bryan's probably going to get this one pretty quickly because this is the kind of stuff that he does. But as I mentioned when I was covering various things for the Steelers, because, they drafted 4 straight offensive players, which they hadn't done for forever. But like I said, still not the most, because they drafted 6 straight in 1976. But one of the things that they did is, and I covered in my Stat Geek podcast, was the whole notion of it had been 11 years, meaning over 10 years, since they had drafted a center. Like, not just a starting center, just a player that was listed as a center. So that's kind of crazy, but center's one of those positions that if you have a good one, you don't need another one, unless, the worst possible case scenario. But if you don't have one, boy, do you need one. So I was looking at that, and there's big gaps in stuff with the Steelers when it comes to drafting centers. But in the modern NFL, and I'm going to say post-merger, because, there weren't nearly as many teams in the league before the merger, so this gives us a better thing with the draft. The Steelers actually had a draft where they drafted 2 players that ultimately were listed as centers. What year did the Steelers draft 2 centers?
Well, you said they were listed as centers entering the draft. So
well, no, I didn't say entering the draft. I said they ultimately,
right.
that right now, when you look back on their career, if you were to look up this player right now, you're going to see a C next to him. That's what you're going to see.
But he wasn't there.
The fact, well, I'll be honest with you, because I don't know what they were listed at during the draft. All I know is what they're listed at now. So
Bryan, if you know it, go ahead.
I do know it because I think I talked about this on either my show or the Scobro show. It might not be the last time, but glaringly where it shows up in my head is 1988. In number 2, they went with Dermontti Dawson. And at number 3, they went with Chuck Lanza. Dermontti Dawson was supposed to be in as a guard, and Chuck Lanza was your center out of Notre Dame. Lanza didn't make it the next year. Dermontti's the guard. The rest is history. Am I right on that, Dave?
That is absolutely correct. I did not know if Jeff would know that one, but that is also the last time that the Steelers took a center in the 3rd round. That's another little thing. And I don't know why I didn't know this. Jeff, do you know where Dermontti Dawson went to college?
No, I don't.
Bryan?
Kentucky.
Yeah, I didn't know he went to Kentucky. I thought that was
Wildcat.
Yep.
Whoa, Wildcats.
All right. That was a good one.
I just can't picture him in blue for some reason. That's what it is. I don't know why. So,
all right, Bad. What's yours?
All right. So, since 2008, the Steelers have drafted a player from a team and then went ahead and got another player from that same team. So multiple players from one team. How many times have they done that since 2008 in the same draft?
Okay. Since 2008.
In the same draft. It's I could start naming some of them off to you there, Jeff.
Well,
I can't get them going back to 2008.
I mean, 2018 was when they did Washington and Rudolph together. So that's one.
Yep.
We know 2021 is another one with Texas A&M.
And last year was 2 from Maryland.
They had 2 from Michigan in 2019 with Bush and Gentry.
So it was 18, 19, 20, and 21 all in a row. There's 4.
We had Maryland in 2020. Did you already say that?
Yeah, that's why I said we have the last 4.
I was thinking.
17. I don't know that there wasn't 17
I don't
because that
think
was the
they had
TJY. No, yes, it was because it was Cam Sutton and Josh Dobbs. So that's
Tennessee,
5. Yeah, so that's 5 straight. I'm pretty sure there wasn't in 2016 that I can think of. 15.
There was not.
I can't think of anyone.
So what do we have? 5 right now?
So far we have 5.
I'm going to go with 8.
Jeff just stops and throws it out there.
Throws out a number.
Hold on. I don't know that it's 8. It could. Hold on. I'm really thinking this through, but I know we don't have a lot of time.
That's the thing.
That's the problem. So I'm going to. I know it's definitely 5. I'm going to say. I could go Prices Right and say 5, and that way I win no matter what if Jeff's over. But now I'm actually going to say I'm going to just flat up because you said 2008, so that one probably has one, so that would make 6. I'm going to say 7.
All right, great job, Dave. Fantastic job in wasting time. Jeff, 8. Congratulations.
So I'm trying to think when the other ones were.
2013, the University of Oklahoma. Oklahoma.
Yeah, I should remember that from doing those draft covers. It was Landry Jones and who was it was someone he threw to.
Justin Brown.
Yeah, I don't remember. That's right, Brown.
Who was actually at Penn State before that. And then in 2010, the Ohio State University. And that was, so if you do remember that, it was Thaddeus Gibson.
Oh, they were like 2 guys that didn't even play, right?
When was Cam drafted?
Cam was 11.
Oh, okay, 10, 11. Thaddeus Gibson.
Thaddeus Gibson in round 4. Doug Worthington in round 7.
Doug Worthington.
So in other words, a waste.
And then here's one guy. So 2008's the last one because I know you mentioned that because I kind of gave that away. 2 guys from Texas. And the one guy actually played a lot more than you would think. Number 2 pick was Lima Sweet. Tony Hills.
Tony Hills, yeah. See, I should have known all these. I covered all these draft classes.
I was going to say, geez, this is your article, man.
Well, I thought 8 was really close. So then I thought, well, if I don't want to guess the same thing, I'll go 7.
Hey, but I got it right. That's all you can say.
I let you guess first. So,
all right, let's do some abbreviated or abridged final thoughts. We'll start with you, Bryan. Go ahead.
Final thoughts. Yeah, there's holes, but when Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert say, hey, we could play a game right now, before the draft, after the draft, when I think of the guys that they could plug and play right now, I feel so much more excited. I know Pat Freiermuth. We're going to love that guy. I wasn't loving him on Friday night. I was loving him on Saturday morning. Najee Harris, you're going to see a lot of Najee Harris. And the guy that you guys love, he's going to be your starting punter. I'm pretty sure of it. But we've got a large guy. He's 263 pounds. His name is Presley. Why are we not calling this guy Elvis? It's a lot better, Jeff. It's a lot better than your nickname for the number 2 pick. I got to tell you, Elvis is a great name for a large dude. That's flashy and everybody.
You'd have to call him 70s Elvis.
See, now it's just too much. It's a big press. It's big press. He's Presley. Big press.
But anyways, the holes are there, but the holes are in depth. But how many teams don't have holes in their depth? So when I look at that, I think that, hey, the arrow's pointing up for the 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
Yeah, we'll never know exactly how things fall out. I know some people are like, oh, well, if Darrisaw would have been there at 24, would he have been the pick over Harris? You know what? Unless they want to come out and tell us, we'll never know. Oh, if Freiermuth wouldn't have been there in round 2, would the Steelers have taken somebody like Creed Humphrey? You know who they might have taken? They might have taken Kendrick Green because they might have had him as their top center that they wanted in that spot. We'll never know. So That's what makes these things kind of interesting. Kind of like we'll never know who the Steelers thought that they were trading in front of in order to get Isaiah Loudermilk. We may never know that answer. And things like that. But it doesn't matter where we drafted the guys. I know some people had brought up the whole notion of, hey, if they had taken Q from the U in round 4 or 5 and bumped those other picks back, would you have felt better about them? I'm like, I might have. But we shouldn't do that. Just like the whole notion of the biggest criticism against Terrell Edmonds, his entire Steelers career, was the fact that he was a first-round pick. You know who didn't ask to be a first-round pick? Was Terrell Edmonds. That just happened to be when the Steelers took him. So we've held over these lofty expectations. We don't need to worry about where these guys were drafted. We just need to all worry about how they're going to contribute to this team. And hopefully 9 guys. That would be insane if all 9 of them made the team. It's going to be really interesting to see how it works out. And guys that we're high on right now, we might be Steelers get 4 of them this year. We might be 3 or 4 preseason games in, and we're like, yeah, I thought this guy was going to be great, and he hasn't shown anything, AKA Sutton Smith. So it's great to talk about these guys because it's what we have to talk about now. But every single one of them, we need to give them the chance to step on the field and show what they can do.
All right, I'm now going to send Dave and Bryan the definition of abbreviated and abridged, and we're going to call it a show. So, all right, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Everyone that's watching live on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for your time. Remember, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, and wherever you get your podcasts or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do so that you don't miss a thing. All right, folks, that's it. The Steelers preview in the books. Go ahead and send us out, Dave.
Hey.
It's the best. All right, we'll see you this week. Have a good week, everyone.